Good morning, common senses. It's Thursday morning. What a week it's been. We've had some fantastic shows, some fantastic guests, and today is not going to be any different whatsoever. Welcome to the Littlewood and Cox show, 10 a.m. through to midday every morning. Thanks to Mike for a fantastic show again this morning. And thanks to everybody who's come across on the Mike Graham show. Please do stay with us. We have a tremendous show ahead. Mark Littlewood is still away, so it's just me today. We might not speak to Mark today, but the chances are we will speak to him tomorrow. Hope he's having a lovely break. Look, it's Thursday. Let's have a quick look at the news before I tell you anything else. So over 30 Brits missing in Nepal, flash flooding. That is a terrible story. Anyone who's seen the footage of that, it's surreal, isn't it, when you see something like that? It's like Fukushima when we saw the earthquake and the subsequent tidal wave. You look at that, it feels like it's another planet. You feel because it's not affecting you, it's not affecting anybody else, but of course it is affecting millions of people, and 30 Brits are missing. Another tragic story on the front page of The Sun. Valentina, 7, innocent victim of joyrider gang war, as the fallout from last week's deaths continues in the northeast. A young 7-year-old and a 34-year-old auntie were firebombed to death in their home. And then on the front of the Times, we have Britain's lost in Nepal, and a story there about Dolly Parton. Well, in the studio, helping me do absolutely everything today is the Duke. Relatively sober, didn't find any sick this morning when I came in. Normally there's at least 2 piles of sick, but there wasn't one pile of sick today. We've got the Duke, we've got the Princess, we've got Charlotte, we've even got the little one, and the little one is related to me. This is Nepo Baby Central here now at UK Live. So my daughter is here learning the ropes. Let's get her on the right wing. Lots of messages coming in from Piper saying, good morning, Coxie. I saw another one saying, Coxie's always in a good mood. There's a choice, isn't there, when you do a show like this? If I came on here and... Oh, look, Pete Middleton. Paul's always in a good mood. Thank you, Pete. Look, what would you want? You know, if I came in here going, oh, you're not flipping believe it again, the missus getting right on me tits, or whatever it might be. You know, it wouldn't be fun, would it? You don't want that. You need entertaining, and that's what UK Live is all about. And that's what Paul Cox and Mark Littlewood are all about.
And we've got a super chat from the Killionaire.
A super chat from the Killionaire. Thanks, the Duke. Simon Kilford, 50 English pounds. Wow. Thank you very much, Simon. I hope your life as a Killionaire is treating you well. Thank you for sharing some of that wealth with us. We really do appreciate it here. Mark Littlewood and Paul Cox, here is another £50 super chat. Look, thank you so much indeed. I put a question out today on my Twitter, as I do every morning before the show. So let's just go and check that out very quickly, shall we? Oh, it's on the screen. I asked today's big question: what government policy has made your life noticeably worse? Well, here we go. So looking at the comments straight away at the top there, we got Rax. Follower of mine for a long time, good morning Rax, said, I can't think of a single policy that's made it better. I can't think of one either. Sean Walsh, who's going to be on the show a bit later, talking about AI, chatbots and jokes of all things, has said, an embarrassment of riches. I'll try and whittle it down to 20. Please do let us know in the comments what you think. Deborah Hampton said, Little Cox. That's not my nickname, by the way. That's the nickname of the show. You are both lovely men, and I admire you both. But you know jolly well what the beleaguered folks of the country will say. Exactly, I know what they will say. But maybe not. Maybe you'll come back and say you absolutely love the state of Great Britain right now, and people like me have got it entirely wrong. Love the UK said, where do I start? Just a few out of many. Net zero, making life more expensive in every direction. An unaccountable and out of order civil service, or out of control civil service, with number 10 North adding to that. Also, DEI rules that lock out people outside of jobs and universities. So true. Do you feel like you have been locked out of a job or locked out of a chance of a place at university because you don't meet the identitarianism of DEI? I mean, I know I've suffered from that, but I don't tend to dwell on that, actually. And my advice to anybody who feels that they are is just keep going, because in the end, talent and skill will always win out. Always win out. because given time, DEI hires will always show themselves to be what they are. And that is generally not good enough, which is a massive issue for Great Britain, because what we find ourselves now in is a mediocrity soup where the best you can possibly hope for is just about good enough. We have a message here from Catherine Pratt saying, well done, Simon Guilford. You are a generous man. Isn't he just? Look, Simon, I know you're out there. Thanks for watching and thanks for all your super chats. We will be doing a number of live shows on the Mike Graham Show across the country over the coming year. Make sure you come along to one, Simon. You would be a guest of honour, and maybe you don't want to be, but it would be lovely to meet you. Vixen says, Cox is the sort of guy you hope you sit next to in a pub for a good chat and a laugh. Well, like I said, the little ones here, my daughter, she would argue that sitting next to me is not as much fun as you'd think it is. But there you go. Let me just talk to you about what we've got coming up on the show today, because we've got a lot coming up. Very shortly, our first guest will be Connie Shaw of the Free Speech Union. Want to talk to her about Gary Stevenson. No, what was his name? Stephen Gray. Sorry, Stephen Gray. He's the guy who's just been fined for sharing a joke online. That's considered not to have been too serious by the judge as well. A fine of £1,000. We've also got Laura Perrins coming up now. With Laura, I'm going to be talking about the Lindsay Clancy case. Now, if you don't know about the Lindsay Clancy case, don't worry. Don't go away and search. Laura will explain it. I will explain it, and we'll show a little clip too. But Lindsay Clancy is someone who has admitted to murdering her 3 children, tried to commit suicide herself, but says she's not guilty. She's not guilty. The Mike Graham Show. Pooch keep his beady eye on the team. Yes, Pooch is out there. Pooch is always there. I never mentioned him, but he is always out there, always looking. Pooch isn't actually here today. Amazing. Which is actually probably why the Duke wasn't sick overnight, because I secretly think that Pooch is feeding the Duke. That was the Duke love. Of course, what you don't realise is the Princess has actually started a love affair with the Duke, and the Princess is someone who I'm worried about, actually, because she always kind of favours the wrong un. And if you've ever got young women in your family, you'll often notice this, that you try your best with them, but they see the first scally they meet, the first drunk, the first super brew sipping guy with sick down their shirt, they go, I can fix him. Well, that's what the Princess has done, unfortunately. And she finds herself knee-deep in a whole bunch of trouble as a result. Like I say, we've got Sean Walsh on, and my guest, my presenter buddy from 11 o'clock onwards is Lempit Opik. Lempit Opik of Cheeky Girl fame and Lib Dem scoundrel. But he's always great value. He's always great fun. I won't get a word in edgeways, but I'll tell you what you'll get is a whole bunch of entertainment. So I'm just going to check in with the guests, not with the guests, don't be ridiculous, what words am I using? I'm going to check in with the comments who we've got. Alison Moore says, Lindsay Clancy, shocked face emoji twice. Yeah, that is something. Lou D, sorry, Paul didn't realise you had a little person with you. We'll watch the language. No, look, she's not that little. She's a young adult, and she's lived with me. So what do you think? She learnt to swear. I sent her to swearing school before she went to real school. She knows all the words. In fact, now she could teach you a thing. And also she grew up in the Greater Portsmouth area where swearing is compulsory. Piper Halliwell said, oh no, that was in response to Eid Barrett. I'm always doing this. I'm always reading comments from commenters to commenters. But anyway, wow, okay, I'll look that up in Google now. I think that might be to do with Lindsay Clancy. Bob the Seagull, great to have our seagull on board, probably munching on someone's chips as we speak. So true, Coxie, about daughters and their first bloody boyfriends. I know, look, the Duke isn't wrong, and there's no two ways about it. But there's no telling the Princess. She's, I think, funding a lot of his special brew. She started buying sort of cloths to wipe up his chin. I don't know what she hopes to do, but look, even though he's a drunk, even though we found him, and likes to eat out of bins, he's a good-looking guy. He's a good-looking guy. They always are, aren't they? He's got great hair, great physique. I'd want him to hold me. Heath Baker says, play up, Coxie, Coxie, play up. Yep, I'm a big Pompey fan. Thank you very much, Heath Baker. I really do appreciate your support this morning. And any support for my football team is always welcome. Alison Moore said, immigration, net zero, Islamism and traitors. Those are the things that she would change. Mr. Fish and Chips, OBE no less. While the pooch is away, the children will play. Well, I've got my children here. What Pooch doesn't know is I've got her on £108 an hour, and she's going to be here for 20 hours today. So that's good news. Thank you very much for that, Pooch. I really do appreciate it. Oh my God! Sorry. We've just found a couple of. The Duke. I said he hadn't been drinking. The Princess and the Duke have already opened up the wine this morning. These are, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm worried about the Princess more than the Duke. The Duke can handle it. He's been drinking and eating out of bins since 2018. The Princess grew up in a castle. She has a wealthy father. She knows people. She's not used to this sort of thing. Anyway, we've got our first guest this morning, Connie Shaw. Is Connie here?
We don't have Connie till 11:30. We do have Sean.
We do? What do I know? I'm just the presenter. Connie's not here till 11:30. Smashing, no worries. Let's get Sean involved. Sean, how you doing, mate?
I'm all right. I didn't know I was coming on at this time till about 20 seconds ago when Charlotte phoned me, so I've not done my hair or anything.
Mate, you look absolutely glorious. You really do. I didn't know you were coming on either, but this is the chaos of Live UK Online. It doesn't matter. I mean, look at you. You've got half a screen ahead, half a screen a ceiling. What more? What more do we need? That's it. There you go, mate. Look at
I'm not taking the blame for that. I'm rushed.
Little quarter zip going on there, mate. You're looking rather stylish.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that? Marks and Spencers, or was it Matalan?
Yeah, were you there? How do you know it was Marks and Spencers?
Oh, of course, I know everything, mate. Look at me. Look at the way I'm dressed. Same shirt
My
every
mum, by
day,
the
different
way.
jacket.
Can you just say hello to my mum, who's called Maureen? Because she says about you that you got a lovely grin.
Have I? Your mum, Maureen. Good morning, Maureen, and thank you for saying I've got a lovely grin. That's because I've accidentally got something stuck up my bottom, and that's
right now.
Sorry, Maureen. Yeah, that's Sean. I forget that this is your mum. How old's your mum, Sean?
So I think she's 84.
You think she's 84? That's right in my age bracket. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So
her
Maureen,
husband's watching as well.
her husband.
Her husband Dave is watching as well.
Wow. How old's Dave?
Oh, he's ancient. He's ancient. He's biblical. He's biblical old.
Biblical old.
I didn't go on to talk about my family.
Sorry, yeah, we had to. Where exactly do they live, Sean? No, Sean. Okay, don't. Yeah, great, smashing. Well, I was joking about that. Please don't tell them exactly about it. Have you seen the wrong uns in the chat? So, I mean, the Duke here for a start. He'll be round there. If they've got any wine in the fridge, that'll be gone. Sean, tell us a bit about yourself, mate, and then we'll get on to AI.
Yeah, okay. I'm the associate editor of Country Squire magazine, which is a kind of subversive right-wing magazine. Not really about the countryside, but we sort of run. That's our cover for running all sorts of subversive stuff. I also write elsewhere, including for the Critic and Daily Skeptic, which I think we're going to talk about that article now. All over the place, all over the place. I'm a former university lecturer. I haven't done that for a while, but my area was philosophy, so I am interested specifically in the philosophy of mind and the nature of humour. And who better to talk about that than a professional comedian? So I'm not going to get shown up here at all.
Thank you very much. Benjamin Butterworth described me as second rate, which I've always held in high regard because, I don't know how many rates there are, but I'll take second in the league of comedians. But that was because I was...
He's within his own category, I'd have thought. But anyway.
Yeah.
God bless you.
God bless you, old butterballs. Anyway, look, let's talk about AI because... Yeah. I'm a big user of AI now, and I've probably been using it most days for about a year. I know it's been around a bit longer than that, but we use it in this line of work for broadcasting. I never use it to write jokes, actually. I remember one of the first times I ever used it, I tried to take a piece of material that I was writing and see if it could help me write it in a different way. And it just lacked the humanity required and the nuance required to write jokes, because it can write jokes, it can write endless knock-knock jokes, but if you're trying to do an anecdote about your actual life, then it struggles a little bit. But can it get a joke? That's the thing. Can it get it? Do you think it can get a joke, Sean?
No, I don't. And that's the big difference. There's no doubt that AI can write a joke, albeit a bad one. There's no doubt that AI can tell a joke, but it doesn't know what it's doing. I first started thinking about this stuff in the early 90s when I was in the audience when the then world chess champion Garry Kasparov lost to a computer. And Kasparov sort of stormed off the stage.
Yeah.
And that was interesting to me because he was reacting like a human person was. Everyone was saying this proves that AI is breaking through, that the world chess champion has reacted has been beaten by an algorithm, basically. And I thought that was the wrong conclusion to draw. And the conclusion I drew was that computers, even back then, were very good at stuff that we were very bad at, and very bad at stuff that we were very good at. And as a philosopher, I've always been interested in the nature of humor and its relationship to the mind and to consciousness and things like that. So I kind of come up with these arguments that suggest that computers can't get a joke because very crudely they lack the subjectivity to do it. In the same way that they can't feel pain, they can't get a joke. And the other thing I say in the article, which I wrote for Toby Young at the Daily Skeptic at the start of the week, just to plug that, is that we forget about jokes, amusement, and laughter as also having a kind of moral component to them. There's a certain complexity to the telling and the getting of a joke. There's a certain etiquette to it. There's a certain interaction to it. And it reminds us that we relate to each other not just as kind of bodies and consciousness, but as moral agents as well. And I suspect that you're never going to build a machine or build a robot that can interact and get the joke in the way that we do, because they would never be properly socialized. Now, I realize that all of that's contentious. I realize there are people who take a different view, but I kind of trying to do two things. First of all, to make jokes and humor central to philosophy again, because it's hardly been talked about. And secondly, to suggest that people who are strong on AI, who say that we're going to build these machines that are just like us, are kind of trying to persuade us of the wrong stuff. They need to persuade us that there are certain things about human consciousness, Paul, that are left out. And people who want to say that we're just algorithms are looking at the measurable side of human persons. They're not looking at the stuff that's more ineffable and less easy to describe.
Now,
so that was a very long-winded answer.
No, it wasn't actually. It was a fascinating answer, a very interesting answer, and I appreciate it, Sean, because the psychology and philosophy of joke writing is something I've tried to get my head around, because what is it that makes people funny? And there's two types of comedy that I do, I guess. One is observational stuff, which I've written, and the other is when I'm hosting comedy clubs as the MC, is interaction with the audience. Now, certainly the latter, the interaction with the audience, very much relies on being quick-witted in the moment, and that is a muscle that you just keep working at, and you learn certain things, or with certain people, certain occupations, you can say certain things. And eventually, my philosophy with that is just talk long enough and so someone will say something that you can make seem funny. It's not about making fun of the person. It's about getting the collective group to think something's funny. And that's true also of writing jokes, because the way I describe writing jokes is what you're trying to do is create the image in your mind, that's in your mind, create the same image as quickly as possible with as few words as possible in the audience's mind. So in order to do that, it's got to be relatable. For me to write something relatable about my life that you and 100 other people might find funny, I need to understand human nature, the sentient values of being human. And I'm not sure an AI can ever achieve that. Now, like you say, AI is all about measurable outputs and algorithms. Chess is about that. Humor's not like chess. Humor has got a bunch of variable outputs, and you just don't know. And one thing that could be funny to you, or one thing that could be funny to you and your friendship and family group, is not funny necessarily to a whole group of people. And it's about creating those images. I just don't see AI is ever going to achieve that, Sean.
No, I agree. And when we say that a person lacks a sense of humour, we're saying more than that they lack a certain capacity. We're saying that there's something not quite right about them as a person, because humour is a kind of, I don't know, I think of laughter as being the sort of universal language of empathy, and humour is a means through which we relate to each other. It's not, and as you say, it's not just reducible. You can give an account. You can give an account of the mechanics of a joke, of how you can put a joke together, which is going to make you and I laugh. But you can't give an account of the feeling of finding it funny. And it's that further subjective thing, the feeling of finding it funny, that's often overlooked in, or the feeling of finding something like anything, which is often overlooked in the whole AI business. They can produce machines that are very competent at doing certain things, but the machine doesn't know what it's doing. The machine has no subjectivity. The machine doesn't even know what it's like to be a machine. And I'm treating humor as a specific example of that kind of flaw. Getting back to, I mean, the interaction with the quick-wittedness that you have to display when you're doing stand-up. I don't know how you do it actually. It just fascinates me.
So it's about intrusive thoughts, Sean. It's the best way I can describe
Yeah.
it. We all have intrusive thoughts, and over the years, I've used humour as a technique to integrate myself into society. Right? Believe it or not, it's not easy. I don't always find personal interactions terribly easy, and humour. And I don't mean this interaction because this is quite, I understand this.
How about this one?
Small talk, for instance. I don't know. A lot of people are very comfortable with small talk, and you think I'd be brilliant at small talk, but really, I'm not always feeling entirely comfortable. And intrusive thoughts come into mind, and I know how to make them funny, so I just allow those intrusive thoughts to come out. But I also know what's not funny, what could be seen as offensive, for instance. And we talk about you don't give offence, you take offence. But obviously, in a situation where someone doesn't know you're a comedian and you start banging on about the size of their head or something, they're all a bit, well, hang on a minute, mate. I only came in to buy some crisps. What are you talking about? And there is structure to jokes as well. You were talking about writing jokes. One of the best ways of writing is the pull back and reveal, where you're distracting someone and taking them somewhere.
Yeah.
One of the first jokes I ever wrote was something like, I once spent 20 minutes chasing a daddy longlegs around my bedroom until I realised I had a crack in my glasses. Okay, thank you for laughing, Sean. It's not the best, but it's a good, But
Come on, then.
it does come on a little bit, only a little bit though. But that's a pull back and reveal. So that's you're going over here. I'm talking about daddy long legs, and then I've said actually it was a crack in my glasses. Everybody can understand it. It's a distraction. AI could write that. If you taught AI about pull back and reveal and the structure of that joke, you could also saying the funniest word last as well. You could teach.
Oh, right.
You could teach AI that. So if you're trying to, you're trying to write something funny and there's a funny word in it, say it last. Leave that with the audience last, and don't say too much. You know this. If you stood in a pub with a mate who thinks he's funny and he's got a joke and he'll tell you a joke, and you're 15 minutes in before he's finished, you've forgotten what the basis of the joke was. You don't know what he's on about anymore, and then you just fake laughter because you're like, thank God it's over. Really, when you're trying to write stuff and you're trying to convey a message on stage, what you want to do is use as little words as possible. Comedians and writers, sketch writers, are looking to convey a message in the shortest amount of words possible. You could teach AI that. What you can't teach AI is the nuance of human behaviour.
And you also probably couldn't teach AI when to fake the laughter out of politeness.
No.
That's actually a very complex social thing that's going on there. You're right about distraction. Obviously, you're right about distraction because you're the professional comedian. But the one philosopher, no, there's several, the main philosopher who's acknowledged for having a theory of the joke was the 18th century Enlightenment philosopher Kant, who talks about what you call distraction, he called incongruity, but it's the same thing. The joke sets things up to go a certain way, so you're expecting a certain outcome, a certain punchline, if you like, and then it pulls away and goes somewhere else, and that causes laughter. So there have been theories of all this, but they're not explanations of what the feeling of finding something funny is like, which is more metaphysically significant and quite deep, actually. We can't really put it into an algorithm or to explain it in purely behavioral terms. You've got three things going on. You've got humor, which is the stuff we find funny, so jokes would be a feature of that. We've got laughter, which is what happens when we find something funny, and we've got amusement, which is the feeling that we have when we find something funny. And if you disaggregate those things, there's a heck of a lot of philosophy to go through there that hasn't been done. And if I put it simply, jokes are serious business, philosophically and intellectually. Which is why some of the brightest people around are stand-up comedians. I mean, yourself, Simon Evans, of course, is brilliant.
Simon, I know you didn't, but let's just pretend you put me in the same league as him, both comedically and intelligently. But I'm friends with Simon, and is an incredibly intelligent, well-read man. One of the reasons he's able to write the type of jokes that he does is because he understands the nuance of language for a start. Yeah. And that's incredibly important, because it's not by accident that Simon Evans can stand on stage for an hour and keep people laughing consistently, that is pure craft. And it's true of all the comedians, whether you like them or not. The most famous and well-known and prevalent comedians are those that are able to communicate with the widest possible audience. Someone will say like, "Oh, I don't like Michael McIntyre. He just talks about himself and moves his head around funny." Well, the thing about Michael McIntyre is he can connect with more humans than maybe Stuart Lee can, for instance. Stuart Lee, on the left in particular, is seen as a very funny comedian because the victims of his jokes are usually the right wing to some degree, or what he perceives as the right wing or the wrong side of history. But that alienates. You know, when Michael McIntyre and Peter Kay are talking about stuff, they're talking about everyday observations that anyone, irrespective of their political bent, can understand. So the more you take away from that and the closer you go into nuance, you are going to make less and less people laugh.
Ken Dodd was famous for having extremely long sets. So, I mean, I saw him come on stage and he was on for 3.5 hours or something ridiculous. And he actually made that part of the routine. He kind of went a bit meta and made his own stand-up routine part of his stand-up comedy. It was brilliant.
Yeah. I've actually spoken to someone who was one of his gigs, kind of got a little bit fed up with being there in the third hour.
People did leave.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. I don't know how we done that, to be honest. I mean, just relentlessly coming out with one-liners as he did. From my perspective, and this is something AI also can't understand, is I think an hour show, most people, if you go to Edinburgh, an hour show is actually about 45 minutes long. You're allowing people to come in, you're allowing people to leave. You've only got a finite amount of time in that room. And I think 45 minutes to an hour is about as much as I enjoy, no matter how much I like the comedian. Beyond that, it's a little bit too much for me. What do you make of that?
The other thing that might be worth mentioning is the fact of embodiment, the way that we speak through our bodies and gestures. I mean, I don't in the article go into slapstick because I don't find slapstick particularly funny, but there's no doubt that it's a species of comedy, and it's a species of comedy which relies on the nature of, gestures and all of that. So we communicate in that way as well. And obviously, algorithms are not embodied. You can stick them in bodies, but they're not embodied as such. And our thoughts, there are some philosophers who, you can go back to Aristotle, who would say that the way we think is actually intimately commingled with the fact that we are physically embodied, and our biology is part of our thought. So there's that part of thinking about it as well, I think.
Sean, this conversation, I could do this all day. This could be, for me, a conversation I can continually have. We've got to leave it there because I've got to get to another guest shortly. But Sean, that was brilliant. I'd love to get you back on. If you'd love to come back on, please do. Let's keep talking about this stuff, Sean. Hello to your mum, Maureen, and her very old husband. And enjoy the rest of your day and your bank holiday weekend.
All right, cheers, mate.
Speak to you soon. See you later. Wow. Well, I hope it wasn't just me, and I don't think it is looking at the comments, that found that incredibly interesting. Sean was a great guest, wasn't he? We've still got 6,000 on the Mike Graham show, so thank you very much for staying. I'm sure we've got even more over on, not even more, but some more over on UK Live. So thanks so much for sticking with us. We've got so much more to come. Very shortly, I'll be talking to Lauren Perrins about the Lindsay Clancy case, and you do not want to miss that. You might think that that's pretty straightforward. If someone kills their children, admits to doing so, hey, that's bad, isn't it? But that's not how it's being seen by everyone, because there is some nuance to that case. But let's check in with what people are saying in the comments. So PASDS says Bob Monkhouse was hilarious. I agree. Bob Monkhouse is one of the godfathers of modern comedy, by the way. A lot of new comedians are inspired by Bob Monkhouse. Jeff Box 1684 said Aristotle was a hoot. Was he indeed? Richard 8331. This guy looks very different from when he was on Strictly. That's not the same Sean Walsh. That's two ends Sean Walsh, who is also a friend of mine and a very, very funny comedian. I didn't want to bring that up because I'm sure Sean Walsh gets that all the time. And we got the Chike. The Chike. Good morning, sir. Or lady, I never know. Please do tell me, the Chike. Brilliant guest and conversations, guys, in capital letters. So he is shouting that with 4 clapping emojis. Who doesn't want 4? 5 next time, please, the Chike, if you wouldn't mind. Let's just check in on some more comments, shall we? John Golding, my daddy Longlegs was always getting stuff on the top shelf. Okay. Again, thank you for your comments. Please do make sure you take your sertraline in the morning. Cancer 1948 said, thank you, Christian. this always makes me laugh, this, because Christian Brogan was on about half an hour ago. And what I know has happened there is they're watching with a slight time delay. So like, oh, why is no one else talking about Christian? I'm going to put a message up. But Christian was fantastic, by the way. If you don't know who Christian Brogan is, or the Talk TV Isabel Oakeshott documentary is, go and check it out. Really, honestly, the more this story gets out there, the better it is for people to understand what crisis faces Britain today. He managed to get himself over to France and back on an illegal immigration dinghy, and in doing so has managed to expose a whole raft of things that we would never know. And as you can imagine, the BBC, Sky News, ITV, etc. are giving it a wide berth, are going absolutely nowhere near it. Dave H says, I believe in safe sex. I have a handrail around my bed. No. Great joke, Dave. Nice, mate. Leave it to the professionals, mate. It's not easy, is it? Strawberry says 6K, still great news. Look, still great views. Sorry, yes, absolutely. We're doing splendidly. Still 6,000 people watching on the Mike Graham Show. Our guest is here now, though, and her name's Lauren Perrins. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. How are you doing, Lauren?
It's Laura, but I am good.
Oh, so sorry.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
I'm so sorry. Do you know what? I was a bit worried I was going to call you Laura Clancy, because if I see two words like that, like Lindsay and Laura, I always get them mixed up. I don't know where Lauren came from. Laura, thanks ever so much for coming on the show. We're going to have an absolutely fascinating conversation about Lindsay Clancy. Before we show a clip that will help our audience understand a little bit more about this, do tell us a little bit about yourself so our audience understand.
Oh, okay. You've caught me on. I'm not used to talking about myself, if I'm honest. I am a lawyer by training. I'm qualified in both jurisdictions in Ireland and in London. I practice for a short enough time in London at the criminal bar, always as a criminal defence barrister, but I've been sort of doing this. Then I stopped working when my children came along. I've got 4 children, and then I ended up doing this kind of journalisming, or whatever we want to call it. So that's the short version.
Laura, thank you. The reason I asked you is because you are a barrister, and I think it will help people understand when we get onto the subject of Lindsay Clancy shortly. But the production team, if we could play that video, please, that would be very helpful.
They should be commended because they did.
I've had it with you.
Oh my God! They should be commended. They didn't
and
kill their children. She's a murderer. These women are cheering. These are man-hating women that are standing outside. This is what it's about. They think the husband did it. They're crazy. They've lost their mind.
Do you know why
they're waving for a murderer?
Do you know why the woman is in a wheelchair? Did you even notice that she's
couldn't care less. She's a murderer.
Because she jumped out the window after this happened.
So she should have. I'd have pushed her. They say that Lindsay was in psychosis. I think these women are suffering from psychosis. They've been watching too many true crime Netflix dramas. You know, this was an incredibly privileged woman, incredibly wealthy. She had a nanny, and she's still complaining that she needed help. She could not have got more help from the system that she already have received. This is a murderer who strangled her children one by one. One of the boys ran away, and she chased him down and killed him.
Laurie Watkins.
What you just said was absolutely disgusting.
Thank you.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Thank you. And
you can hear that he's not. Okay?
Why? Because it's true.
You clearly don't care, so pipe down.
I don't care. And by the way, men watching this, if you have a woman sat next to you on the sofa who is defending this murderer, you got to think deeply about this. I've seen weddings.
So we need to have some empathy with.
Talk to your women and find out what are they thinking. They're defending this woman. It's
I don't think anybody's defending what she did, but you can have empathy for what she went through and how she.
I know many women that this has happened to. No, they did not kill their children, but they also, what you failed to mention.
They should be commended because they did.
I've had it with you.
Oh my God! They should be commended. They didn't kill their
misogyny.
children. She's a murderer. These women are cheering.
So, Laura, that's a rather extravagant way of showing that this is quite a divided debate. Now, Laura, Lindsay Clancy is from Massachusetts. She's a mother on trial for first-degree murder of her 3 young children. Her defence team argues that she is not guilty by reason of insanity due to postpartum psychosis, because she was on a number of drugs to help her. Now, what do you make of this case? Because it seems quite straightforward, but it's not, is it?
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways you can look at it. Is the case itself, which, I know people don't like to be bogged down with details and nuance. I'm not saying that's you, but obviously things like legal tests and medical tests, I'm qualified in one and not in the other, is very important. But also just the reaction I have seen, at least coming out of the United States, and I've seen it, we saw there in your clip, I feel leaking into the UK has to be quite mumsy about it, very disappointing. That they've turned this into yet another talking point, yet another sort of, I think the person who had linked to that had said this was very entertaining. I want to be very clear, and I know you're not saying it. Postpartum psychosis is not entertaining. This is not something to debate. It's like saying, let's go and debate prostate cancer, or why are you complaining to me about your heart palpitations? No. What happened in this case, just to give the background to those who are not familiar, an absolutely tragic case where Lindsay Clancy, 36 now, strangled with an exercise band her 3 children, Cora, her daughter who was only 5, her son Dawson who was only age 3, and her 8-month-old baby, Callan. It just, a really unspeakable offence. And there's a photograph of them, and it really rang through to me because I had quite a similar photograph of my 3 children at a similar age. The age is a little bit wider, but I really recognise that photograph, and if I think a lot of moms would. And the prosecution case is just unbelievable. Even, I consider myself a cynic. I consider myself somebody who thinks carefully about human behaviour. I also consider myself a conservative. But the prosecution case are essentially saying that this woman woke up one day and said she didn't really fancy doing this motherhood lark anymore, and she plotted and planned to kill in cold blood, in a brutal manner, her 3 children. I have looked at this in some detail, certainly not as much as others have, and think this is not the case. What the defence are saying, and this is proved, both Lindsay Clancy and her now ex-husband Patrick Clancy are suing medical practitioners for malpractice. What happened was that she suffered from postpartum depression, which is common and serious, but that then tipped over to the much rarer condition of postpartum psychosis, which the NHS says it affects about 1 or 2 in 1,000 mothers who give birth. Now, if you are suffering from postpartum psychosis, this is a psychotic emergency. You go to the A&E if you have this, not your GP. Symptoms can include hallucinations, delusions, and mania. And what happened, unfortunately, for Lindsay Clancy, she did reach out for help. And as the other just ridiculous man said, she did reach out, and she was on up to 13 different medications at the time, some of them incredibly powerful. I think this should be a moment to look at what is happening with big pharma in the United States. I think she went 48 hours without sleep, and anyway, things got worse and worse. And her case is she was suffering either from a sort of change as a mania or psychotic, but she was listening to what are called command voices telling her to kill herself and the children. She killed the children, and then she cut her neck and her wrists and threw herself out the 2nd floor window, which is now why she's paralyzed from the waist down. The evidence of what she was like as a person beforehand is very compelling. Her mother obviously stands by her. The nanny who was called to give evidence said that she was a very, very loving mother. Now, the mother-in-law, and if you don't want to get into the science of it, I think is also a compelling witness, because if you think about it, her mother-in-law has lost everything. Sue Clancy, she has had her 3 grandchildren taken from her. She was a nurse. She worked in the labour and delivery room, and so actually did Lindsay Clancy. She was also a nurse, delivering children, delivering babies. And in evidence, Lindsay Clancy's mother-in-law, as I said, who's lost everything, said that Lindsay was a wonderful mother. She loved her children, all of them, very, very much. So if I'm presented with that kind of evidence, I ask myself, I don't think people like that just turn around one day and say, I don't want it anymore. And even if you do, then you get a divorce. Okay, do not do what she did, and in the United Kingdom and in Ireland, if this case, because it's being tried as a first degree murder case, and the plea is that she wasn't criminally responsible, because they do not have the offence of infanticide available to them in the state of Massachusetts, or indeed any jurisdiction in the United States, whereas that offence is available in England and indeed Ireland, or indeed say diminished responsibility. And I don't think that this would be tried in either England or Ireland, or if it was, it wouldn't be as divisive. There was a very tragic case here in Ireland a few years ago, where a 44-year-old woman suffocated her 3 children, and she was found guilty by reason of insanity, but there was no contest between the state, I was going to say the Crown, but it's the state here, and the defence. But as usual in America, it's how can we cause as much division as possible?
Oh Lord, there's so much to unpack. This is obviously a very, very tragic case, and thank you very much for explaining that so eloquently, because it's difficult. There's a fine line with a number of things here. The way it's reported could be seen as exploitation. We see the division of social groups. We almost pits men against women, but not always. But it seems to pit left versus right to some degree. You're seeing people out there going, we're seeing mainly women out there saying, men don't understand what this woman's gone through. She wasn't culpable, therefore she's not guilty. Men saying things like, well, if this was a man, we'd view this differently. Now, if this was a man, obviously men don't suffer in the same way after having a baby. But if it was a man, do you think that this would be treated differently, Laura?
So, I mean, first of all, yeah, but I think that's very critical. If this was a man, then it probably wouldn't have happened, because men cannot suffer from postpartum psychosis. Okay, that's what she's claiming. Now, if you do have male annihilators, even aside from this case, if you gave me a father, God forbid, who had killed his children, and there is no other motive. Because for most of those cases, there is a motive. So in the Watts case, which I looked at detail, I think Chris Watts, who killed his wife and his 3 children, he was having an affair. So what normally happens at those kind of cases is there's either a huge financial problem, or indeed, or there is usually an affair. And if that, the police look at that, and this is the reason he wants to get rid of his family. Sometimes he makes an attempt to kill himself, and he kills the whole family. Now, if you're looking at a father, okay, and say he suffered not from psychosis, but from, manic depression, and he's on very serious drugs. And there is all the evidence, all his friends, all his family, including his mother-in-law, says he was a great father. He was a devoted and dedicated father, but he got depression, and then he was put on 13 different medications. And in fact, the doctor, which has happened in Lindsay Casey, doubled the medication of one of the very strong drugs beforehand, and he killed his family. No, I would be saying, I think that looks like insanity to me. If there's no other motivate, people do not flick like that unless there is, as I said, a money motivation or an affair. And most of those family annihilators, I see people are so ignorant about this horrendous condition. Yeah, and what I want to say is genuinely, I don't know the age profile of your audience, but if you're a woman, or indeed you are a man caring for a woman who's had a child or thinking about having a child, just be aware of there's baby blues is one thing. The postpartum depression is quite common and can happen. Now, postpartum psychosis is very rare. Thankfully, it is very rare, but it does happen. And in the UK, if you want to know how tragic this is, this was June 2024. A mother who admitted killing her 5-month-old daughter had been a voluntary inpatient at a mental health unit at the time of the child's death. This was in Leeds on the 20th of December. I think it must have been 2023. Hayley McFarlane, who was 39, she smothered her baby Evelyn while on a walk. Now, she entered a guilty plea to infanticide, which was accepted, and she received, I believe, a hospital order. So these cases, you know, these cases happen, and this is how tragic this is. Again, she self-referred herself to the local mental health team in October. This poor woman up in Leeds. She wasn't sort of ignoring it. She knew that there was something wrong. She was discharged 3 days later. She was prescribed antidepressants and sleeping tablets. And then I think she actually, she checked herself back in. And she said at the time the court heard McFarlane displayed a fixed belief that she had ruined everything and had stunted her baby's development. So this is what happens in these cases, from what I have read, is that the mothers become fixated either on saving the children, someone else, there's an outside threat to the children that they must stop, or they themselves are a threat to the children. I mean, it's difficult for you and I to understand, but these, you know, because mental illness, especially severe mental illness, is rare, but it's not as, if someone is in a wheelchair, let's face it, we can see the physical disability, but a mental disability is far worse. It's harder to understand, but it is real. It's a chemical imbalance in the brain. I'm not talking about people who are anxious, although severe anxiety can spiral. This is a chemical imbalance in the brain, and if it's treated incorrectly, and I think it was in Lindsay and Clancy, again, because Big Pharma in America are so keen to dole out these incredibly powerful drugs, you know, the harm can be absolutely devastating. As I said, that was an English case. I mean, can you imagine a 5-month-old baby? That's how serious this is. So
yes,
people who have serious mental health issues, they shouldn't be dismissed. If anything comes of this trial in UK, anyway, you know, just stay aware of these kind of conditions. It's rare, but it can happen. And it's not that, by the way, this is very important. It's not that you're kind of, this isn't like Scooby-Doo. Mothers aren't going around sort of dazed and confused for days. No. They can operate on a day-to-day level. In fact, on the day of the killings, Lindsay Clancy took her daughter to the pediatrician because she had a stomach ache, the poor daughter. Now, again, if you were planning on killing her, you would wonder why you would bother bringing your daughter to the pediatrician. But I don't know. Maybe she is an evil genius. I don't know. And then she came home and played, I think, in the snow with her children. So this was supposedly one of the better days. But then something happened. And I have been researching this on the internet, and I have, like, from people who are qualified doctors, psychiatrists, you know, supposedly these command voices are very authoritarian, and you can try and reason with someone and there's no reasoning with them. I mean, even somebody else said one of the drugs she was on, I think it might have been just an anti-sleeping drug or a sleeping drug, but she said, you know, if you take these things and you don't fall asleep straight away, the carpet starts moving. That's what I've heard. I tell you what, I value my mental health after looking into this case. I actually, sure. It's terrible.
So I thank you so much once again. I think it's really important. I did a podcast, I was interviewed on a podcast just yesterday without having, I would say 90% of the detail that you've provided today. And I think it's very important that we allow our audience to listen to that. My immediate reaction was, this was a step too far. She'd gone over the Rubicon, killing 3 children and then trying to harm herself. Seemed much more like a selfish act rather than a selfless act. And I looked at it in a very binary way. I'm not convinced entirely that she is not responsible. She is responsible for the death of her children. You know, she's admitted that herself. But I think it's also very important that we understand this condition better. I mean, you know, just to play devil's advocate, however, and we have to when we're talking about things like this. Again, I don't want to. There doesn't need to be whataboutery here. The only thing I can put up against it is if this was a guy, and I'm not putting myself in this situation. I've never, fortunately, much like yourself, I very much value my mental health. I've had, as everybody else has, you know, you have your problems over the years, but I've never felt this way. So it's very difficult to put myself in the position. But there'll be people in the comments, as there is, saying she still killed the children. The children are still dead, and we're not talking about the children. We're constantly talking about Lindsay Clancy, and Lindsay Clancy seems to have made this all about her. Now, she might well have done that because she's fighting for her freedom. But what do you make? What would you say to people that look at this and go, well, she still murdered 3 children? This is just totally unacceptable.
So she killed 3 children. The question is, whether or not she is criminally responsible. Now, it's technical, but this is why what a jurisdiction calls murder is important, and it's certainly important to her. And just actually, if I can just jump forward, so if Lindsay Clancy is found guilty of the 3 counts of first-degree murder, she will be imprisoned for life. No parole, no chance of parole. They don't mess around over there in the US. If she is found not guilty, and it's basically she's not criminally responsible, it's not by reason of insanity, she will be detained at a high security mental health facility. People seem to think she's going to be doing the shopping down in Walmart. That's not what happens. Andrea Yates, who was the last mother who drowned her 5 children in a bathtub in 2001 in Texas, the well-known liberal state of Texas, she was found guilty by reason of insanity. She was detained and remains in a high security mental health facility. She was convinced that Satan was going to kill her children. She had to, I can't even understand it. She had to kill them instead. So that is what Lindsay Clancy faces, either life imprisonment or detention at a high security facility. From what I've read from what I've seen, she is obviously a broken person. If she is, the choice is either the ultimate evil. You couldn't get any more evil than a mother killing her 3 children, intentionally killing her children like that. Okay, I accept that completely. Or she wasn't in her right mind. She is not. As I said, you only convict people of murder, even in England. It's a complex offence, even in England and indeed Ireland. If they're criminally responsible, not just that they did the act, but that they had the appropriate mens rea, okay? Now, she's actually nearly saying she didn't even do the action because she couldn't resist the command voice. It's kind of technical, but it's important. So morally, what you call murder is really, really important. For people who might think, because they've been listening to too much Fox News, that, as I said, she's going to be out there on Oprah Winfrey's couch or shopping in Walmart. No. That's not what happened. They have put her through a 6 to 7 week trial with really gruesome autopsy results. And, this other idea that, people like me who aren't willing to plug my ears and go around and say the earth is flat, that actually I think postpartum psychosis is real, like all the doctors in the NHS do, suddenly don't care about the 3 children. Like, I'm not even going to dignify that with an answer. I have 4 children. My youngest is 5. As I said, when I saw the photograph of those children, it doesn't get any sadder than this case. And this is why, although rare, thankfully rare, we must look at why something like this happened and see if we can stop it happening again. As I said, up in Leeds, that poor mother drowned her 5-month-old baby, and she was actually in an institution. That's how dangerous this is, because you're looking at this person and they say, oh, she's getting better. It looks like she's getting better. Not always. This is, it is rare. I don't want to hype it up, but it's out there and people need to be aware of it. Mothers need to be supported. I've heard commenting, oh, you're celebrating her or she's a martyr. No, you have to try and understand what is happened. Like, number one, is she really evil and criminally responsible? Then convict her. That's no problem to me. But if she isn't, and the medical big pharma are out there doling out these drugs to vulnerable mothers, where she can then go over the edge and take the life of her 3 children, then that's not something you want to happen again. I think the civil case against the practitioners is going to be very, very important, if not more important, to see what kind of care, I believe negligent care, but to see what kind of care actually happened in this case.
Laura Perrins, that was fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing your view there. I'd like to get you back on very soon and talk about this. This case is going to keep going on for a little while.
Yeah, well, thank you for not making it into a culture war issue.
I really didn't want to.
Cancer.
No, I don't want to. I also, in order for me to form an argument personally, I need to understand it better. And I was kind of caught on the hop when I did a podcast yesterday. Not that it's anything I'm ashamed of, but I think being caught on the hop and not understanding everything means that I just came in it in a very binary way.
Well,
Go on, sorry, Laura.
No, I had a huge argument with a very close friend of mine who did the same thing, and look, sometimes you're under pressure, right, with subjects, so that's
Exactly, Laura. Tell everyone where they can find you until we next see you again.
Yeah, well, I am on Substack. I try and write on English and Irish issues, or a big issue like this that has what you call leaked over. It's either Laura Parent's Substack. I call it the West Brit, which is a niche term they call Irish people who are really interested in Britain. So Laura's Substack, the West Brit. I'm on Twitter as well, where people can get angry at me there.
Oh, great. Well, I hope they don't get too angry. Laura Parents, thank you ever so much. Have a good weekend. Take care.
No problem. Thank you.
Wow. Look, there's plenty of comments coming in. We're going to go to news shortly, and then I've got Lempe Opic with me. We're going to talk through this. It's a big story. I'm going to read some of your comments, and I'll give my view after the news.
Good morning. It's Edward the News Hughes with your Thursday bulletin. Harry the Herbert and Meghan are back after 6 years. The King and Queen have booked the Caribbean. One couple returns. The other books a holiday. Efficient. Energy bills rise 4% in October. No extra help. The PM just wants wealth creators to stay put. Warm thoughts all round. The Knob of the North, Andy Burnham, visited a Sainsbury's, promised work experience for the young, and pubs report a bounce. Labour MPs want voting reform in his first 100 days. Ambition. 33 Britons missing in Nepal floods. A child and her aunt died and a Middlesbrough fire police are treating as murder. More thunderstorms incoming. Classic August. Film legend Tim Curry and pint-sized country icon Dolly Parton have both died. The Palace Guards played 9 to 5. Even the weather couldn't ruin that. That's your lot. Don't look at the bill. Please remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
Well, thank you, Edward Hughes, for the news. Now, that was a very powerful interview, I thought, with Laura Perrins on a very important subject. Lindsay Clancy is the main focus of this at the moment, and I saw a lot of comments saying that the children aren't being mentioned enough. Well, the only reason I can think that is because it's Laura Clancy that's on trial. But I agree, okay? So my personal view hasn't changed a tremendous amount. There is nuance to this. The psychosis is, something that's real. Very much so. I don't know the evidence with regards to the combination of drugs and what that can mean, or if that can induce the psychosis, and therefore she was completely out of control. What I would like to say, though, is as this story develops, my thoughts are always going to be probably, first of all, with those children, all 3 children murdered there with the exercise band, and irrespective of what the husband did or didn't do in his personal life prior to it, he too, and the rest of her family, of course, are now grieving the loss of those 3 children and the loss of Lindsay Clancy too, because whatever happens in this trial, she's already admitted killing those children. Therefore, she's going to end up in an institution for the rest of her life. I do not envisage an outcome where she's not guilty and therefore is to roam free. I think if she was, that would be outrageous. But I'd like to thank Laura for coming on also and giving her view, because there are a lot of women, particularly in the comments, that have said that we just don't understand. And I think when they say we, they do mean the general public, but men also. And talking of men, I have a great one with me right now. Lempe, how are you doing, my friend?
Good to see you. Yes, good to see you.
Lempe.
Shocking story.
A shocking story. Yeah, give me your take on this.
Don't like judging by television. There's an entire legal system going on and process going on at the moment, and it's quite clear that it's going to conclude quite soon. Overall, it's obvious to me that this woman wanted to kill herself as well. Whether she heard voices or not, this is what's called a murder-suicide attempt. She's paralysed from the waist down. I don't doubt that means that, amongst other things, she's not going to have a complete life now because of her self-harm. The figures, though, so I don't know whether she heard the voices. I wasn't in her head, but the figures are quite shocking. We're all focusing on these 3 people. Do you know how many parents kill their children in America every year?
I don't actually. I really don't.
Up to 500 children are killed by their parents every year.
So that's 10 per state.
I suppose so, yeah. And so we're focusing on these 3. But statistically speaking, just under 2 children will die today at the hands of parents. And the younger the child is, the more likely the mother is to kill them. The older the child is, the more likely the father is likely to kill them. And also,
the older the child is, the more likely the
yeah. So
the reason I say that, Limpet, is because my daughter is in the room. She is 17, and she looks quite worried actually now that as she's getting older, I might get angry. But I won't. I promise not to do that today.
But you'll be worried, and she'll be glad to know that the older the child is, there's less likely it is to happen because she can fight back.
Yes,
she can fight back.
I'm pretty sure
so
now.
fear not.
I'm pretty sure now that she could fight back, and I would lose. But I'm trying to lighten the mood here, obviously slightly, but it's a huge thing. I'm just going to go into the comments very quickly. And PW said, "Stop finding someone else." This is not you, Limpet, or me. This is just in general. Stop finding someone else to blame. She strangled them. No one else did. Who else in here? So Lone Wolf said, "I have no problem with punishing the ones that make excuses. Also, sick of these people." Ludi63, in response to Alison Kirby, says, "It exists. My sister had it. Luckily, she got help." And that's an important point, actually. I think if we polarise this into political view versus political view, as this has become inevitably, as does in our divided society now, some of the nuance, some of the humanity gets lost of it, because what happens is we start going, oh, well, the left are on her side because she's a woman and we hate men, and the right go, this has got nothing to do with men, this woman's only getting away with it because she's a woman. I think we need to get away from that.
Think about the statistics that I said before. Youngest children most likely killed by parents, older children most likely killed by women, older children most likely killed by men. So this isn't really a gender thing. You can't simply say, well, she was a woman. And I don't like having gender politics involved in this, because this was murder. Whatever her motivation, it was murder. These 3 children did nothing to deserve this. No. And incidentally, there's another even darker statistic. About 1,800, just under 1,800 children die of neglect in America. Just neglect and abuse rather than intentional murder. Put all that together, it's 2,300 kids, probably more. They're the ones we know about. And the question's got to be, has it got worse? Has it got better? Is it more likely to happen now or less likely to happen now? I don't know the statistics, to be honest. But one of the worries I've got is something that you were just talking with your interviewee about. We're focusing on the woman, on Lindsay Clancy. As a parent, and you're a parent, I just can't stop thinking what did those poor children feel at the end. And that's the heartbreaking part of this. And I think our society still actually does draw a line. There's a red line here. Well, you abuse children, and that's
my understanding is one of the children tried to run away, having seen what their mother was doing to her siblings, and she chased after them. So, and obviously subsequently killed them. Now, that is where I start to look at this a little bit more binary, because when I hear something like that, irrespective of the psychosis and how she was affected by the drugs, irrespective of whether her husband was having an affair or not, and I don't know if that's true or not, I understand he's remarried elsewhere now, this was a couple of years ago, and is married to the person he was allegedly having an affair to. Irrespective of all those things, in that moment, she is the human who is choosing to take other humans' lives, and those humans happen to be her children. Because it's a mother and her children, there's something innate in us that makes that incredibly difficult to understand.
Yeah, there is this, in my view, fundamental fighting instinct in me. If anybody came close to my children, I wouldn't use proportionate force. I'd do whatever I had to protect the children. I'd deal with the rest of it in court. The visceral protection of the most important asset in my life, the biggest privilege of my life, being a parent. And she didn't have it. She didn't have it. And there's an argument to say, and I'm sympathetic to this, actually, to be honest, that she should just be banged up, or whatever the local court ruling is, because however mad she is, if other people know they will not get away with this, then somehow in their deranged mind, they just might stop. And to have this cultural relativism, that's what put me off being in the Lib Dems, actually. Oh, we've got to understand everybody's point of view. There has to be a line. There has to be a line. And we begin to destroy society if you can always plead this insanity thing. I talked to the mother of one of the murdered young people in Nottingham recently.
Oh, really?
And she is incensed. She said every cell of her body feels this white rage because the guy has been put in a mental institution instead of doing time. Just imagine how the parents of that murdering scumbag, whose name I won't even deify on television, by honouring him, by being named in Southport. Imagine how they feel. There comes a point when you simply say enough.
Yes.
And I wonder if one of the reasons we have films like Citizen Vigilante, which I definitely recommend, and Nobody, which is a sort of lighter take on it. The reason these vigilante films are doing well, and the Death Wish, is because people want some absolutely raw response to this kind of thing. I'm not advocating vigilantism, but I think we're close to it.
Well, on all fronts, actually, I think civil war is something that is possible, and this could also induce it. Also, we're just waiting for that spark, unfortunately, I think there's a case for morality here, and not just morality and reality, and perhaps spirituality as well, because in order for us to make sense of this, we have to have a social contract, which in this part of the world is based on Christianity, the Ten Commandments, and the speaking of the Gospels in the Bible. Now, we seem to have taken morality to a point where, like you say, we want to justify everything, and we want to be able to protect every victim, and make everybody a victim. Yeah. Now, if you have read the Bible, God is not saying that we should look after all victims. We should identify victims through our moral fabric, our moral teachings, and their punishment is not necessarily to be wicked, but their punishment is so that the rest of society can see that this is wrong, and that's part of the social agreement. We seem to have broken this social agreement now to the point where everybody's just deified. Yeah. And even people committing the most heinous of crimes are held up as the Welsh choir boy, who we won't mention, or whoever it might be in Nottingham. This guy, he had schizophrenia. We didn't do enough for him. No. His ultimate act was to commit murder. There are now grieving parents and our children gone. He needs to be punished for that. Otherwise, what are we saying to the rest of society?
Absolutely. And I'm a Christian myself. But Jesus wasn't weak. He was very political. He wasn't. One time he went in and they were using the church for basically a market. He went mental, threw over the table, said, "You can't do this in my Father's house." And Jesus' message was about turning the other cheek, it was about being compassionate and so on, but it wasn't about being weak. In fact, actually, these days where the main religion is this completely misguided climate scam, because it's got all the elements without you having to go to church, we've got this atheism which is undermining everything you've just said. When it comes to religion, when it comes to our society, one of the things I'm worried about is that when you take away the real God and replace it with our fake CO2 devil and all of this, then you actually take away the call for morality. Humanism is nonsense. What does humanism mean? We make up our own rules. Yes. That's all it means. You can't have a moral fibre, you can't have a moral framework if there isn't an external anchor. We could spend the whole day talking about theology, but there's a fundamental point. If we make up the rules, they're not real.
With humanism, what you get is the Welsh choir boy, what you get is the Nottingham killer, and what you get is Lindsay Clancy. And as uncomfortable as that is for people to accept, it's the truth. One of the reasons that we defer to God is because it's not human making the decision. I talk about this term, capitulating our autonomy. We sacrifice our autonomy to greater things. Now, when we sacrifice it to God and the teachings of God, what we're saying there is someone greater than us, and we're asking for help. When you make it the climate alarmists, and when you make it the state, and it's politically dividing, whose best interest have they got in mind? Now, people will say, well, God doesn't exist, and he's got no one's interest in mind. Well, the one thing about God's teachings, whether you believe in it or not, God isn't saying, I'm going to look after you and everything you do is fine, it's me who made you do it. Saying, no, you've got autonomy. You can choose to believe in me or not. If you do believe in me, I will look after you. You can become part of my flock, and therefore I will help guide you. But it's ultimately up to you. You have autonomy to make decisions for yourself. When you remove that reality or spirituality, you end up with people acting amoral.
This ties in directly into what you've been saying, what I'm about to say, my view. My view is just quite simple. God has to give us free will, otherwise we're just a machine. For some reason, which I don't fully understand, God needs entities that make decisions, and that's got to be bad decisions too. I totally lost faith in Stephen Fry when he said there can't be a God because there's evil. If there's no evil, there's no good. If there's no valley, there's no mountain. There has to be a choice. And people like Stephen Fry just demean themselves by saying, oh, well, God let bad things happen, therefore there can't be a God. Tying right back into this point, because we spend our time with this moral relativism, everyone can give an excuse. We have diluted the idea that there is good and evil. I think that the West particularly is locked in this terrible battle of good and evil. The whole Epstein thing, whatever happened to those revelations? How come not one single prominent person who visited the island has never been tried? All of that buried somewhere in there. And some
Humanism buries that.
Well, because we're not meant to judge people and so forth. You have pictures of Bill Clinton with what looked like quite young ladies in the pool, but nothing's been proved. Only Epstein, who somehow strangely killed himself in those odd circumstances,
in
the cameras were off,
prison in New York.
and all the cameras are, people like that to disappear. And in the meantime, we're all hectored to say, don't make that judgment. On the other hand, of course, we're all meant to hate the Russians because Ukraine is good, one of the most corrupt states in the whole of Europe, by the way. So we're being told what good and bad is by humans. One of the pathetic things about Keir Starmer, there were many, was his atheism. He's proud of it. In other words, he believed in nothing. He had no moral framework, and it jolly well showed.
Absolutely.
This Clancy thing, what worries me about it is, again, once you demote God to be behind humanism and the climate emergency and understanding mental health, which is important, I absolutely get it. You said a very good point. All of us suffer at some point, some kind of a problem. Once you demote, though, the higher power, the higher purpose to something else, then this sort of thing happens. Now, as I say, I'm not prejudging the outcome, but I think an awful lot of people will be very disappointed if people like her and that horrible man who killed Barnaby Webber was the son of Emma Webber, who I spoke to last week. When you demote them to just being sick, it feels to me that we're not sending the right messages, because then you can always say, well, I can kind of get away with it. Incidentally, the same thing's happened with paedophilia, the same thing's happened with sexual abuse, because they're grooming gangs. Yes. And they didn't know that it was illegal to rape underage children. So we give leaflets to people who illegally come here and say, please don't rape our children, it's not allowed.
I tell you who did know, absolutely everybody else. And the problem with the grooming gang saga, apart from all the abhorrent crimes, is that we've attempted in any way to justify it. There is no justification for any gang of any culture to groom young disenfranchised white girls, as they all were, because they were separated from society, a lot of them fostered, orphaned, whatever it means, given up by their families, and were basically not missed and could be taken advantage of. Those are the victims here, not the grooming, not the people in the grooming gangs. And if it's difficult and uncomfortable for anyone to accept that these people have done that because they were Pakistani Muslims, because they didn't like the West, because they didn't like white girls and they saw them as cheap, then I'm sorry, but the truth is the truth. And all of this discussion is about the truth. And there isn't sort of many versions of the truth. There is nuance to what's going on. And, God willing, this judge is able to make, and this jury is able to make a sensible decision based on the truth.
Interesting point. The only defence that's going to lighten her sentence is to plead insanity. Now, I'm not saying that she's making it up, but if I was her defence lawyer, I would be left with no option except this one. And what we're really talking about here is the destruction of the West. Yes. Might be willful destruction of the West. 250,000, maybe up to 1 million underage girls in this country raped almost exclusively, not completely, but almost exclusively by these Pakistani rape gangs. And we're still seeing people in Parliament, to their great shame, to this country's great shame, saying, oh, well, we don't really need to have more of an inquiry into this. Why not? This Clancy situation, again, we're interested in it because it's such a morbid, horrible story. And any parent, any sensible parent will feel for it. And all the time it's the same thing. Well, we've got to understand the victim, the perpetrator's motives. And as I say, I would probably not feel this strongly, but speaking to Emma Webber, a very, very powerful woman, she said I won't forget this for a long time, every cell in her body feels white rage towards the perpetrator. We need to start taking a stand. And I, by the way, think that this is being done on purpose to destroy the West.
I'd love to hear more from the parents of the victims, actually. Like with Harry Novak's father, came out and did a great speech, but also had been coached into saying certain things about community cohesion. What I want to understand is 6 months later, a year later, does Henry Novak still believe in community cohesion, or is he filled with that white rage? And if he's filled with white rage, why is he filled with that white rage? And why does he not feel comfortable to talk publicly about it? We know why. We've capitulated our autonomy to the state. And when you do that, and the state say you cannot talk about this, even if your son is killed because he was white, you cannot say you are angry about it. And in talking about community cohesion, all you're saying there is we need to remember the perpetrator's family, because they are the ones we need to be concerned about here. Absolute horse mess, absolute horse. It drives me insane that people would capitulate their autonomy in that way.
There's another example of Anna Turley, who's the MP for Redcar. I don't know if you saw this. This is just despicable. She went and laid flowers or some kind of wreath at the spot where 2 police officers and 5 scum, it seems, 5 yobs, died. The 2 police officers died because of the other car. The 2 police officers were doing their job, but she gave them parity of esteem. Why? Even the mainstream media didn't do that. And she basically goes, well, let's remember all 7 dead. I don't feel very sympathetic to the 5 dead yobbos who killed the 2 police officers. And this is the problem. She's an MP. Now, she said, oh, the police advised her to show equal respect. The police said, well, we never give you that advice like that. By contrast, Mo Molam, who happened to, by coincidence, be the MP for Redcar many years ago, and she's an amazing woman, and she was Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, and I worked with her because I was Shadow Secretary of State. She walked in to prisons talking to terrorists, people who'd killed other people, and she never acknowledged they had the right to do it. She said, we've got to stop this, let's talk. And not once did she cross that line. But Anna Turley lays wreaths or whatever flowers for 5 people who killed 1 driver and 4 accomplices who killed 2 police officers. It's all the same thing.
Absolutely.
It's all the cultural relativism.
And in my mind, she's enabling a future crime of that nature to happen. We're going to go to Connie Shaw very briefly, and I can't wait to talk to her. Please do stay with us, Limpet, and we'll discuss what I discussed with Connie afterwards. But this stuff is maddening, and I think, like you say, it's an attempt to break down the very fabric that's built up Western society. Connie, good morning. How are you doing?
Morning, Paul. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I've just spent about an hour talking about how the fabric of the West is being destroyed. Lindsay Clancy, I don't know if you've seen this case in the States, and arguing the nuance of that, even though this is a mother that's killed her children. And we do have to talk about the nuance, but that's not all I want to talk to you about. Connie, I'm a massive fan of yours. Everybody in the chat and watching this will be a massive fan of yours. I've been privileged enough to meet you a number of times. I'd like to talk to you about Stephen Gray, but before we do that, for those in our audience that might not know, and I don't know where and if they've been, if they do not know, tell us a little bit about you, Connie, and how you got to this point.
So I'm the External Affairs Officer at the Free Speech Union, and when I was at university, I was in need of the FSU's help when my student union disciplined me, and as well as the University of Leeds itself, took disciplinary action against me because I was expressing my gender critical views as a result of starting a podcast where I wanted to discuss identity politics and woke politics. And the student union removed me from my position at the student radio station, and then the university itself launched disciplinary action against me to the point where if I was found guilty I could have been expelled, and the Free Speech Union, after I paid my £30 membership as a student to the Free Speech Union, instructed a barrister who helped write a 16-page legal defence that I needed to defend myself against basically the university who put me through this disciplinary action, and I was found not guilty of anything. And the university decided to put me through all of that, I think in the hope into scaring me into not talking about these things, and unfortunately for them they created a monster. So here I am today, very proud to be working for the FSU and continuing their work.
I cannot urge people enough, just even viewers and listeners to this, to join the Free Speech Union. Of course, I'm a member. I feel I need to be. I've never had to lean into the FSU, but I almost guarantee that one day I'll be in your DMs or Toby's DMs going, I've said this and they're after me. And I'll be very, very grateful that I've joined the FSU. The FSU also have been fighting the cause for many other people, other than yourself, Connie, and other than the people we know about. But Stephen Gray recently was fined £1,000, £1,000 for sharing a joke online. And this joke just happened to involve bacon, Islam, and child marriage. Okay, all those three things together are pretty innocuous. However, when you put them together, it's seen as a protected characteristic. Do you mind telling us a little bit about this Stephen Gray case, Connie?
Yep, so Stephen Gray is a retired police officer. He served in the police for 30 years, and so he never expected to then have the police knocking at his door, because you said there rightly, Paul, that he had shared a post. He had reposted a post that had been reposted by thousands of other people. And as you say there, the joke that he reposted, which he was convicted for, it was under Section 127 of the Communications Act. The judge deemed that it was grossly offensive. So it wasn't necessarily on the basis of a protected characteristic. It was just that it was deemed grossly offensive. The joke said that people who eat bacon are less likely to marry 9-year-olds. And clearly that was a reference to the marriage between the Prophet Muhammad and Aisha when she was just 6 years old, and the consummation of that marriage when she was 9. And because we know across much of the Muslim world that child marriage is a very sort of normal practice, far more prevalent there than it is in the West. And it's very clear where that necessarily cultural or religious inspiration for that practice comes from. So that was what Stephen Gray was found guilty of, and as you say, he was fined £1,000. And we are now, I mean, we were defending him in his original court trial. And we're now helping him appeal that decision, and he'll have his appeal in November, and his crowdfunder is on our website. He was one of those members where he had joined a while ago, never expecting to ever actually need our help. He had a few friends who'd joined it, and they recommended that he joined, and then, you know, there he was needing our help. He never thought he'd need it. I think that's a lot the experience of many of our members, where they join thinking, just in case, I probably won't ever need their help, but I'd like to support the FSU because there are other people who do need their help, and then they find themselves needing our help. And Stephen said himself that he's donated to many causes that the FSU has supported in the past, and so he really hopes that people will do the same for him. So yeah, that is an absolutely shocking case. It's one of the most shocking that we've ever had, really.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to urge absolutely everybody to join the FSU. It's so important. It's maybe give it as a gift if perhaps you can afford it, but a friend of yours can't. And I'm not sponsored by the FSU. I really like Connie. I really like Lord Young, or Tobes, as I like to call him. But he has done some fantastic work here, and it could really help, particularly in these very dangerous times. I'm in two minds whether to read the joke out. I'm not Ofcom here, but I don't want to prejudice him. I don't want to get Stephen Gray in any more trouble than he's in, but that just proves one thing. I should be able at any point just to say what that joke was, and I can do, and the producers here would give me carte blanche to share it on here. But I think we're in two groups now. One is us and the other is them. And I want to protect someone like Stephen Gray, and I don't want to do anything to harm him, because I hope he gets his £1,000 back, and I hope he's exonerated. But this isn't just a standalone case. There seems to be protected groups now, protected characteristics. One of them seems to be Islam and Muslims. The other seems to be trans people. And basically, there's about 6% of the country that are a Muslim, and about 0.3% of the country that are trans. But there seems to be a massive group around them that feel the need to absolutely protect them at all costs, irrespective of what they may be saying or doing. And when it comes to women-only spaces, for instance, why are people so energised? Why do people feel the need to get into those spaces?
Why do some men feel the need to get into women's spaces?
Yes, I mean that. I mean men, Connie, yeah. Why do they feel that, Connie?
Well, I would recommend that people do some research into autogynephilia. It is very well known that it's a pretty common fetish for heterosexual men to have. It's estimated in some of the best research that's been done that about 3% of all men have a fetish where they are aroused by the idea of themselves being a woman. Now, many of those men will keep, like many people who have fetishes, in the privacy of their own home, which everyone should be free to do. However, trans ideology has basically opened the door to the men who have this fetish and want to then perform it in public. And so when people talk about third spaces, gender neutral toilets, having a third category in the Olympics, we know that those things don't work because these men don't want to go into the third space. They want to go into the women's space. It's a direct violation of women's rights, and they know that, and I think they enjoy the fact that they know that they are not meant to be in there, and that's part of the thrill. That's why you'll see many on social media who are not trying to hide their enjoyment when they go into women-only spaces. They take photos of themselves in the mirror to show that they've been into a women's toilet. Specifically for that reason, you'll hear people saying, yes, but women take photos in the mirror with their friends in the women's toilets. Yes, because you're with your friends. It's not to make a point about the fact you were in the women's toilets. When you look at these men taking it, it's very clear that they are almost using it as a trophy to display to the world, look at me, I walked straight into a women's toilet and here I am enjoying myself here. I think there's a very large naivety, widespread naivety when it comes to autogynephilia. If you just hear what these men say themselves, it's very obvious that this, for many of them, is a fetish. For other young men in particular, sadly, there are some gay men who think that life will be a lot easier if they pretend to be a straight woman. And obviously those men I have much more sympathy for, but it doesn't mean that they have any more right to go into a women's toilet. So there are varying reasons, but ultimately this is an ideology that has been hijacked by fetishistic men who want to exploit young children who are confused about, who are uncomfortable in their bodies, using those kids who are confused about their gender and their identity to justify the fact that they themselves have always been trans, the idea that they were always born this way. Many of these men will have also fathered children and then go on later in life to start wearing their wife's underwear in private and then come out to their wives and basically destroy their families because they would rather perform their fetish publicly than basically keep it in the bedroom. Many of these men, I would suggest, also have some narcissistic personality traits. I'd really recommend, there's a excellent documentary on YouTube called Through the Looking Glass, and it's a series of interviews with women whose husbands, after having kids together, being married for a long time, decide to come out to their family and say, I'm actually a woman, and the way that has destroyed the family's lives. So it is quite a complex issue, but ultimately, yes, these men who are desperate to get into women's spaces, it's not because they are vulnerable, it's not because they just want to fit in and that they feel much more comfortable with women. I think it's because they get a thrill out of the fact that they are pretending to be a woman and that they like violating women's boundaries.
I've got Lembit Opik with me, Connie, who would like to ask you a question if you don't mind. Not because you've opened up a Pandora's box for him by describing that.
Connie, you've been very courageous. You nearly lost your paid-for education. As remember, you had to pay for the education. They're trying to swipe away from you. And is it true that your offence was using the phrase trans-identified male? Was that it?
That was one of my alleged crimes. So the university accused me of harassing a member of staff because I had written an article for Graham Linehan's Substack in my final year of university about how trans ideology was everywhere. And one of the things that I included was the fact that one of the lecturers who was going to be teaching me feminist philosophy that year was a man who identifies as a woman. And I didn't name this person. I simply made the point that when you're already in a very hostile environment for gender critical students, regardless of who is teaching you, just from the pressure from other students, if the person teaching you not only believes in the ideology but embodies it himself, then that's going to result in students self-censoring even more. And I was accused, for writing that, I was accused of harassing this member of staff, that I had opened up an environment of hostility towards him. And the 5 allegations were that I had referred to him as a trans-identified male, that I had apparently outed him, even though I'm sorry to say, we did all have eyes. Most women are very quick to be able to tell who is a man or a woman, men as well, but particularly as a woman, because of the way that we have evolved, we know when there is a man in our midst. Also, the fact that he spoke very openly about the fact that he was trans, not least in his book, and also online. So yes, I was accused of using a slur, which was apparently trans-identified male. They had no evidence for that. I was accused of misgendering him, i.e. calling a man a man. I was accused of
slurring,
because I had said to Graham
slur.
Linehan, I had said to Graham Linehan when I'd interviewed him that it was an honour to interview him, and therefore I hadn't distanced myself from his views. So there was a number of allegations which they basically didn't have much evidence for. I was originally told that my lecturer didn't have any issue with gender critical views, and I later discovered that he had signed the letter condemning Kathleen Stock when she was hounded from Sussex University. So I'm not sure whether that's entirely true. But yeah, so I eventually was found guilty of nothing with the help of the Free Speech Union.
One of the interesting stats is that 1 in 8 Labour MPs identifies as not straight. 1 in 8. That's nothing, out of total all proportion to the British population. And I just wonder what's going on. Why does this community have so much power when, obviously, as you said it yourself, those people who genuinely want to change their gender and so forth and live in a different way, I get that. But why are they endlessly forcing it upon us? Why is it that in modern drama, or modern mainstream media, you have to have these sub-stories? There's a great series called Ted Lasso. It's actually about football. And they had this whole sub-story, about who's gay and so forth. What's driving this?
Well, I think that many of our institutions are obviously captured by the idea that in order to make something worthwhile in our modern entertainment industry, that there needs to be a storyline of someone's identity. Identity politics has infiltrated everywhere, not least the creative arts. And so I know that many of my gay friends and gay people that I know are frustrated that in many TV series and many films that there will be a character who the fact that they are gay is the main basis of their character. You know, I know many these people that I speak to who are part of the LGBs. The fact that they are lesbian, gay, or bisexual is possibly the least interesting thing about them. They don't want that to be the thing that they are pointed out as being. That's this is something that you just happen to be, in the same way that straight people just happen to be straight. It doesn't define your personality. But of course, I think since 2015, when essentially Stonewall had achieved its aims in getting gay marriage legalised in the UK, and homophobia had become far more taboo, rightly so. They then needed a new sort of cause, and they added T to the end of LGB, and it has become an ideology within itself. And I think it is important to recognise that many LGBs are absolutely fed up with the fact that the T, the Q, the plus, and all the other hundreds of letters that have been added to the end of it have basically hijacked a movement that was originally based on genuine need for human rights, to be treated equally under the law, to not be attacked in the street, or not being able to get a job, all of these normal things that anyone should be awarded. But now it seems that, it's very clear that because of the fact that it has become such an identitarian movement, actually quite militant in some ways as well, I would say because of the fact that the T and the Q has been hijacked onto the end, it's become something entirely different. And I know that there are many LGBT people who absolutely cannot stand it.
Connie Shaw, I salute your courage. What a brave guest.
Yeah, well, Connie is the very best. I mean, we've been trying to get her for weeks, but she's a big time star now, and she's high in demand. Connie, can you just tell everybody very quickly where they can sign up for the FSU? We'll put it on. Yes. We'll put it in the comments later. But if you could just tell them, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the Free Speech Union's website is just freespeechunion.org. I'd very highly recommend you join. We now have over 48,000 members. When Labour came into power, we had 14,000. Wow. In the last 2 years, we are now up to 48,000. We have at least 300 cases open on our books at any one time. We get about 40 to 70 requests a week. 15 members of staff in the case team who are dealing with your requests for help. You can email us at help@Free Speech Union. I mean, the cases that we've been seeing, like Stephen Gray's, we were talking about it earlier, they are not isolated incidents. We've had a tenfold increase in cases regarding immigration since the general election, and a fourfold increase in cases regarding people who are penalised for talking about or criticising Islam. So if you're someone who wants to talk about these very concerning things that are going on in our country, I can't recommend enough. It was the best money that I ever spent when I was at university. Gender critical cases still, I think, are still the biggest single category that we have of cases, but they are slowly being sort of pushed down as we get more and more cases coming in concerning people being penalised at work, having the police knock on their door. We've had a 500% increase since the general election of police being involved in people's lives because of things that they've said, mainly on social media. But as we get more and more cases basically to do with multiculturalism, which is clearly this failed experiment, we're seeing a more authoritarian state trying to crack down on people dissenting. And so if you are someone who is on social media, who talks about these things, who wants to have a chat about these things at work, I can't recommend enough making that subscription to the FSU.
Connie, thank you so much for coming on. You're a wonderful woman. I see a bright future ahead. It's a shame that we need the FSU, but I'm ever so glad that we have it. Until next time, Connie, take care of yourself. See you soon.
Thank you so much, Paul.
See ya. Wow.
This is ridiculous.
It is. I mean, the idea that we need this is Orwellian. Which is a phrase of our time, unfortunately, considering he wrote his book 1984 in 1949, almost spelling out exactly
1948, I think.
Was it 48? I thought it was written in 48 and published in 49.
Oh yeah, maybe. Okay.
I don't know.
You said written.
Yeah.
Pedantic. Sorry.
Yeah.
We've got bigger things to talk about. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's absolutely okay. These things are important, but Connie has found her way into the FSU and has become an important voice because she just happened to point out that in her view, a woman is a woman, a man is a man, and neither can become the other. And that she believes it's important that we protect spaces for women. None of these things were big topics 10 years ago. 15 years ago, definitely not. 30 years ago, if we'd been having this conversation, people would have thought we were absolutely bonkers. This has been well established for a millennia. We're going backwards, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. There was a documentary, I can't remember it now, in the 70s, 80s, of a man who was transing to a woman. He had a very difficult life, actually, in the end. His life, or her life, didn't end well. And it was really interesting for a lot of people. I remember watching it, probably as a teenager. I was fascinated because it seemed so unusual. Now, this is a celebrated thing. It's almost promoted. They have drag queens going into schools and so on. 98% of the human population knows what they are. 2%, maybe I think it's maybe even less than that, but around 2% isn't straight. But we obsess about it. We get children to think about stuff which is completely age inappropriate.
Exactly.
And the maximum percentage of the British population that's trans is 1 in 200. Though funny enough, there's actually a mistake in the figures because it turns out that while 9%, I think it's something like 9% of people say that English isn't very good, when it comes to the people identified as trans, it's 29%. In other words, they didn't understand the actual question. It was 10% said they didn't speak English. I'm looking at it now. 29% of the total number of transgender people couldn't speak very good English. So the figures are actually even less than that. And on we go. Now, I don't have an issue. I actually was involved with the UK Transsexual Awards at one point, many years ago. I've got no issue with this. What I've got an issue with is this endless ramming this down people's throat. I'm colourblind. And about 8% of men are colourblind. It's something like that. And I'm not sure exactly what it is. That's 4 times more than the number of gay. Why don't we have Grey Pride Month for people like me?
You're a victim. And this is a great point, Lembit, is because we've commercialised even victimhood. And if you can find the most oppressed, that is the golden goose's egg. We found, colourblind affects men more than women, so perhaps that's not going to be the victimhood that anyone's going to die on. But what I would say is that they, by which I mean how do I like to describe the ultra progressive left? Because just saying left and right is kind of meaningless now. And there are definitely people like myself and perhaps even yourself, Lempit, that pretty much started. I was a Labour voter when I could first vote, and in my 20s I was a Blairite. I was someone who considered myself centre left, then centre right, and then just merely by working on GB News or Talk TV or the wonderful UK Live Online, I'm now right, far right maybe,
Far right,
but my views have not changed. I was in conversation on a podcast just this week, and I'd said I'd spoken to you, and one of the things we'd spoken about your views on was that your views have not really changed, and you were Mr. Lib Dem in the early 2000s. If people said Lib Dem, they could probably name the leader and they could name you, and that was it.
And my girlfriend.
And your girlfriend. Well, I wasn't going to mention that, but
it was in your eyes.
It was definitely it was there, heavy, weighing. And yes, you were famously with a cheeky girl.
Yeah, I was indeed.
Yes.
Let's just get it on the table.
Yeah.
The elephant in the room.
I think we should, and kudos.
I'll be right in a minute.
It's definitely something to be impressed by. I mean,
well, you're in, but thank you.
I mean, I must admit, I was in a group of people at the time that were like, "How has he managed that? What
I'll
a
show
legend."
you later.
Yeah. Oh, please do.
Too much information.
But look, I think your views haven't changed, have they?
No, they haven't. I'm a libertarian. Well, what that basically means is it's actually almost ironic based on what we're talking about. Do what the hell you want in your life as long as you don't harm other people. But also, you can't give offence. You can only take it. So you can say offensive things. That stupid joke, it was reasonably amusing for some people, but it's not reason to fine somebody. In my view, in our world, as long as you understand the consequences of the harm you do to yourself, drinking, smoking, perhaps drug taking, as long as you understand and you own those consequences and you don't impose those consequences on a third party, live your life as you want to. If you want to have a sex change, do it. But don't ram your culture down my throat. Now, I didn't move at all. I've not really moved in my politics for 35 years. But the Lib Dems have moved, because they've become this namby-pamby cultural relativist. Well, we don't really want to have this strong Christian agenda. We just want to let everyone do the thing. Sharia courts, bring them in. If you want to live under Sharia law, go to a country that has Sharia law. Don't bring it here. My parents are Estonian, and when they came here, they made it quite clear, we embrace the culture that embraces us. We don't expect people to fly Estonian flags on National Estonia Independence Day and so forth. You embrace the culture that embraces you. Otherwise, go back to the culture you actually want.
Absolutely.
Now what we've got here is we've got this perversion of our culture on things which for most people are irrelevant but very uncomfortable. You could never have this conversation on the mainstream media anymore because they're all essentially bought into this weird kind of messed up thing. I don't care what your sexuality is. Actually, I don't even know what your sexuality is. It doesn't make any difference to our conversation. And it doesn't matter to me if you basically got a particular religious nuance which is different. As long as you believe in something bigger than us, then that's good enough for me. These people seem to be desperately trying to replace God with a different religion.
Absolutely. Just for all the viewers out there, particularly the waspy women, I identify as white and straight and ready.
I didn't see that coming out of the
I just made that last bit up. I like to keep the waspy women on side.
And desperate.
And desperate.
Desperate.
That's what you can take ready to mean, actually. Desperate, just transpose that for desperate. Look, earlier on, I was toing and froing in my mind. Of all the things to toing and froing in my mind about, it was sharing the joke that the guy got in trouble for. Now, there were people in the comments who were sort of saying, well, why didn't I? And it wasn't because of the joke. I don't think the joke's important. No. It's not, I'm a professional comedian.
Connie actually did share it,
Yes, I know she did, and that's absolutely fine because what that does is shows what people are getting upset about. The reason I didn't is because for me, it's not the joke that's important. It's the ability the freedom to be able to share it. Because as Orwell said, freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 = 4. If that's granted, we have freedom. That's the truth, okay? So the truth is that you should be able to say something. And when it's a joke, okay, it might be a thinly veiled joke because you dislike Muslims, for instance. But hey, you live in the United Kingdom, and you know what? You're allowed to dislike Muslims if you like. You're not allowed to act on it in a violent way. You're not allowed to incite violence against them, but you are allowed to make fun. But you're not actually now. Legally, you're not.
One small point. George Orwell did write it between 1946 and 1948. Small point.
What a pedant. You win.
Why isn't it pedant? It's one D.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
Think about it. Why should you never tell a pun to a kleptomaniac?
Why?
Because they take everything literally. Back to the point. Just a tsunami of humour coming your way.
Yes,
of a highbrow nature. The whole point you've made is right. I can choose to be offended by the joke, But you still got the right to make it.
Yeah.
I could be offended by your shirt. You've got the right to wear it. I could be offended by the music you like. You've got the right to play it.
Exactly.
But now we have this new thing where the risk of causing offence means that Christian preachers in southern England towns have been arrested because they might offend people who don't agree with it.
Yes.
I don't think many Muslim preachers are being arrested.
Oh, there are none. There are none.
And this is the problem. The whole thing, that cultural relativism, is wrecking the society that has actually been instrumental in some of the greatest achievements of the Enlightenment, the last, say, 4 centuries of human history. But now we apologise for it. Now we try to pay reparations. Now we say, well, actually, you don't really want to go too hard down the Christian path because we might offend people. We got the king, the defender of the faiths. No, you're the defender of the faith. There's one religion which is essentially the orthodox religion of Britain, and it's Church of England.
And his mother did that for 70 years.
Yeah. And I'm worried about it. I like King Charles as a person, but I just worry that if even the head of state has already been drawn into this thing, I'm not quite sure where this goes.
Absolutely right, and the prescription of words that we have to say as well. I mean, you can identify as you wish, but don't tell me or anybody else how I must describe you, what pronouns I must use. You know, this is what we've been fighting for. It is essentially the freedom to offend. Now, I don't like to be offended. I'm sure you don't like to be offended. But one thing I don't want to do is impose that on everybody else and say to everybody else that my version of the world is the version you must live by. I really don't. However, we're going to...
Can I just say one quick thing?
Yeah, of course you can.
One of the ironies is I actually don't mind being offended, because if I spend all my time talking to people who I agree with, I don't learn anything. If I meet people who have a different view, and I remember when I worked in a great company called Procter & Gamble, they summed it up like this. When you argue with somebody and they say, I totally disagree, say, good, you see it differently, help me understand. That's the point. So I am drawn to people who have a different view, but we're not allowed to do it now because we're being corralled into a mindset which doesn't tolerate dissent. And that's why our society is in so much trouble.
Well, talking of people that don't tolerate dissent, Angela Rayner doesn't tolerate dissent. Can we play or show the ident for the next section, please? I believe that I've got Angela Rayner down the line. Are you there, Ange?
I defo am, yeah. Ready to go.
Oh my God! Look, thank you for taking time out of your, vaping, dinghy riding, helping the people of the UK with us Labours. I really do appreciate your time.
Right, I've not been doing no dinghy riding, so you can just wind that one back. Thank you very much. I'm here and I'm ready to help people. I think that's all you should have said, frankly.
Well, I'm so sorry, Ange. Please do accept my apologies. I do have some questions for you from our listeners, actually. Are you okay for me just to... she's ready. She's absolutely ready. This one we've called the bin lid crisis. Dear Ange, my husband never fully closes the wheelie bin lid. He just sort of rests it on the top. Every time I see it, I feel a small part of me die. He says nobody cares. I care, Ange. I care deeply. And that's from Janet in Bromley, who is emotionally exhausted. What do you say, Ange?
Janet, I understand completely. And do you know something, Janet? I care about you deeply. Us Labours care about women and girls deeply, and we've demonstrated that a lot over the years. And what I would suggest is there's a lot of underground misogyny going on within your marriage. The signs are there. Perhaps you ought to have a little discussion with your husband and say, which way are you planning on voting in the locals and that? Because I just get the feeling, Janet, that you might be married to a far right adjacent, and we are trying to stop that right now.
And sage advice. I don't know why I'm laughing. This is very, very serious.
Really?
I've got. It is serious. Sorry, misogyny is very serious. I've got another one here from a listener. Who says, and this is what we've called the butter war. Dear Ange, my wife keeps scraping toast crumbs back into the butter. I now have what can only be described as crumb.
Oh dear!
Ecosystem.
Oh, dear.
No breadcrumb here. Breadcrumb ecosystem living in the tub. Is divorce excessive? And this is from Martin in Worcester, who is spreading resentment.
Right. That's a lot to unpack.
Apparently, Martin did unpack it.
I've got to say, this is just another example of on the down low misogyny happening. I think it's absolutely disgusting when people do that. There's an hygiene thing as well. There's a real issues with hygiene. There's nothing worse, frankly, than somebody being so ignorant as to spread butter on the toast and then just dunk it back in like they've got no thought for anyone else in the household. And again, I think you need to have a little chat with the rest of the house to find out their voting intentions, because I'm getting a really strong far-right adjacent edge with this family.
This does feel very far right. Now, look, we did have a couple of celebrities write in, actually.
Oh.
I'm going to try and hide their identity. Maybe some people are guessed, but the first one here says, "Dear Ange, I finally got the top job after years of telling everyone my father was a toolmaker. Now people keep replaying old clips, debating every change of position. And worst of all, the toolmaker line no longer seems to get me out of awkward moments. Should I find a new anecdote or claim Dad also made bus stops?" And this is from Kay in Westminster.
Right. Well, I would say you're probably a little bit irrelevant now, to be honest. I think the world's probably moved on, and I can't work out who it is, to be honest, because it sounds like a pretty forgettable character, if you ask me. I don't think he's that important anymore. What I would say is, maybe if the toolmaker thing isn't getting the reaction you want, just move on to something. Just be a bit more honest and say, I was dead into communism and that when I was growing up, and I'm a massive atheist. So just as an example, I don't know who this person is, but I would say that they were probably quite irrelevant now, to be honest. So just move on.
Definitely irrelevant. One other famous person here. "Dear Ange, my husband and I spoke very publicly about why life in Britain became difficult for us. Yet there is always speculation about whether we might spend more time there again. If I do come back, how long do I have to wait before everyone stops saying, 'I thought you hated it here'?" And that is from M, somewhere very private with excellent lighting.
Can I just say, M sounds absolutely lovely, and I am really feeling like she sounds very, I'm going to say it, very oppressed, and
yes,
obviously she's been through so much. Sorry, I said she. I should have said they, because we don't know. You don't know. You don't want to assume things. You don't want to assume things. I think they've probably been through a lot of trauma. And I would hope that they would get the help that they needed. And I hope that they asked for the help when they were going through said traumas. And I hope that they got it. But if you want to dip your toe in and return to a place that you didn't feel welcome, and I dare say might be a little bit far right adjacent. I don't know who you are or where you're going or what you're talking about, really. But I'm just saying, just watch your back. Whoever you are, watch your back, because there's a lot of very dodgy people who aren't as nice as they make out to be. So I don't know who you are. Obviously, I don't know who you are, but I would say just keep your loved ones close and protected. And if you feel as though you need to be protected financially, I would lobby the right people of where you are moving to. I don't know where you are, where you're going to, but I would find out who your local MP is and maybe put the pressure on for your security to be fully paid for, 5 million a year. That's a suggestion. I don't know who you are. I don't know who you are.
Dare I say, Ange, it's almost like you and M could have an affinity. Very similar women, I mean thems. Look, we're going to go back to normal people now, by which I mean listeners and viewers of UK Live Online, particularly the Littlewood and Cox show. "Dear Ange, my boyfriend puts 3 ice cubes in every drink, including squash. I use 2. He says 3 is normal. I say 3 is showing off. Please settle this." This is Emma from Croydon, keeping things chilled.
Emma, look, I think there's a very serious point to be made here, and that is we are in a water crisis right now. We're in heat waves. We've got endless back-to-back heat waves. And the last thing that you should be doing is dunking extra ice cubes in your drink. That took water, because I remember that from school. It took water to make ice. And then you have to put it somewhere cold to make the water become ice. I was listening in school. And because of that, you've got to really ration. I think we need to do an ice cube. I'm going to put this to our Andy. We need to do an ice cube ration. And I would say ditch him out, because he's not taking the water crisis seriously enough.
Well said. Net zero, net ice cubes is what I say. We're calling this one Fridge Rage, Ange. Dear Ange, my son puts empty milk cartons back in the fridge. He is 29. What age am I legally allowed to change the locks? And this is Janice in Norwich.
Boot him, Janice. Boot him out. He's old enough to look after himself. And that is just another example of misogyny. And I'm not saying it's your fault, Janice. I'm not saying it's your fault. It's probably definitely not your fault. But at his age, if he's still doing childish stuff like that, he's probably a member of Reform or Restore.
He got to be, isn't he? And he absolutely must be. Look. Yeah. Ange, tell me what you've been doing over the summer, Ange. I really want to know. What have you been doing over the summer? Have you been doing anything to help everyone out?
You know me. I love helping people out. It's all about other people and defo not about me. I have been helping loads. I've been helping our Andy a lot, actually. I've been helping him loads, making fantastic TikTok videos. Really important editing TikToks. Like, what's your favourite snack, and what was the shops that have gone now that you wish were back? And I was if you noticed in that video, I was trying to steer him a little bit. Bless him, he needs a bit of help. I was trying to steer him because we wanted to talk about the big shops that aren't here anymore, and he started talking about some shop no one's ever heard of. Oh God, I'm gonna have to talk about Woolies. So I said, what about Woolies? What about Woolworths? And then we did just a little bit of joking about the penny tray sweets, and did you nick them? And oh no, we didn't do that. And Oasis. So vibes. We are vibing. We are over maxing and over farming right now for maximum max Riz. If you didn't understand any of that, it's because you're old and you're not in our voting range. So there
I think that's true. What I don't understand is how any of this helps the country, Ange, but I'm sure that's because I'm far right adjacent and simply don't understand what the normal people want. You don't really understand. But that's fine. I mean, as you know, our Andy had a big moment this week, did you see him in the Ukraine? Did you see him? Yeah, he's playing the guitar, wasn't he? I mean, that's just what the people of Ukraine needed, I thought. The way he strolled off that train with his polo shirt with the zip, like a regular lad, just a normal lad, just doing normal things, like meeting up with Zelensky. He wasn't full of hugs like our Keir used to. Our Keir used to be a bit touchy-feely, he just lingered a bit too long, didn't he, when he was hugging. But our Andy he strolled in all masculine, all the maxing. He was all the maxing, strolled in, all masculine. And he got off that train like he was on a stag do. He was like, wow, Liz, everywhere. Maxing and relaxing. And then he got a guitar. Well, he didn't plug it in. That's fine. Don't matter. You don't have to always plug them in. I think they were relieved, to be honest, that he didn't get plugged in. But, I mean, it is all about going there saying, do you know this new order track? Shall we do a bit of Smiths? Also, what we're going to do about the massive threat coming from Russia. But that's fine. I mean, that was just a small thing. It was all about the Riz. The Riz is important. I'm going to learn about Riz. Ange, thank you so much. Look, there are so many more questions for you. I think we're going to have to do this again. Would you be up to coming back and talking to us all again and helping us all out? Yeah, but can we just, between you and me, can we not call it a second job? Because I'm having a bit of no, we won't mention it. Yeah. I mean, I'm doing it out of the goodness of my heart, because frankly, you lot need to be set straight on a thing or two, because I don't like where this channel is going. So I want to steer you back
into solid ground of as far left as we can get you. So yeah, bring me back and I will set your audience straight on a thing or two.
Thanks, Ange. See you later. Look after yourself. Keep vaping.
Nice one.
See ya. Oh my God, Angela Rayner there, Lempit.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine?
What's depressing is I actually did an interview with Angela Rayner a few years ago when I had the audacity to suggest that before she starts criticising other people for earning money outside Parliament, she should take a look at her own expenses. And they went mental, but she had two great, formidable titans of morality supporting her, Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby. I rest my case.
What have those two ever done that's wrong? Oh my goodness, what a show. Limbit, what are you what are you up to at the moment? What are you doing? What can people get engaged with what you're doing, you know?
Well, yeah, follow me on @Lembitopic on X. I'm quite lively there. You got 2.2 million hits on the X last week, which is a personal best.
Wow, that is amazing.
Actually, yeah, it was quite good. And I do some other broadcasting as well, but I'm here quite a lot.
You are, and we do want you more. Will you come back?
Oh, absolutely. I'll be here faster than
I mean, I've got to say, there are people absolutely loving you in the comments. So if I didn't invite you back, then they probably wouldn't have me on.
No, I've been typing those in myself, yeah. All those different names. Yeah.
Interestingly, a lot of people in the comments there are laughing as if like the Ange thing was a joke. But look, I don't know where they're getting that idea from. It was difficult to get Angela Rayner on. Very difficult indeed.
It's surprising.
She came on.
It's surprising she had the time because, as I understand, her commute from Brighton to her constituency is 264 miles each way.
It's incredible.
And what was
isn't
it, 50p a mile?
Well, and on
what's
that,
not to like?
On that note, I'm going to start to bring the show towards a close. First of all, thank you to absolutely everybody in the comments. I've not been able to get to you as often as I would like to today, but that's because we've had a jam-packed day for you. This has been an intense show today. It's great, Mr. Fish and Chips OBE. Thank you, Mr. Fish and Chips. A super chat from Chris Maud for £5. Says, brilliant show again, Paul. God help you on Sunday, pal. You're getting better viewing figures than Alex on Talk. Let's not mention that. Don't tell Alex that. She was actually messaging me while I was on air. I don't know what she said. Hope it's got nothing to do with that. Jill Johnson said, great discussion, Paul and Lempic. Just on my wavelength. Look, I'm glad we're on your wavelength. That probably says more about your mental health than ours, I would say. But we're glad that you've tuned into us. And who's this? Over the Rainbow said this show today was on fire. Clapping emojis, fire emojis, and great guys. Thank you very much. It's midday, so we got to go. But before I go, I want to thank the Duke, the Princess, the Little One, Charlotte, and the Russian. I could not do any of this without any of them. And a huge thank you, of course, to the man you just saw on your screen there, Lembit Obit. Go and follow Lembit. He'll be back. Undoubtedly, there's no way that he won't be back on UK Live Online. And talking of coming back, I will be back tomorrow, which is Friday at 10 a.m. for Littlewood and Cox. Once again, we have another amazing show for you. But do tune in to the Mike Graham Show at 7 a.m. till tomorrow morning. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, keep it real.